Welcome to another edition of the Bandwagon podcast. And today I am joined by, I would say, kind of a national treasure for the South Asian movement. Um, and I can't pick this guy anymore, but he is Mr. Bobby Friction. Welcome.
Greetings, Ricky. I salute you. You warrior. You warrior, you.
No, it's fine. It's finally we managed to get the stars have aligned, and we managed to kind of get this going after a few kind of weeks of delay, ain't we?
Well, basically, I wanted to make sure I had this background.
Yeah.
So I've actually led you on a bit of a merry chase to make sure that I had the background free, because this is the house background for all Zoom meetings.
Okay.
So we actually have to fight and go, you haven't got a Zoom meeting this afternoon. And actually, no, I'm only joking. But yeah, it's been a bit of a merry-go-round, but I feel like, kismet digal.
Yeah.
Basically, someone up there wanted us two to talk and connect today, not any other day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, I think the stars have aligned because there is quite a lot to kind of get your opinion on, and I've always had it in the back of my mind to say, like, you've managed to interview and speak to loads of people, but I've kind of felt we didn't, and I've never kind of known a little bit about you in terms of, like, your thoughts and feelings on certain kind of areas. So I think kind of the natural process in terms of, like, the past 18 months with the pandemic, 12 months with the pandemic, how do you think that's kind of had it affected your kind of lifestyle and the way of your thinking?
Honestly, I think I've always had really good mental health. Or let me rephrase that. I've always thought I've had really good mental health, and I've always been a positive kind of optimist. This last year and a bit, whether it's the pandemic or whether it's just the period I am in my life at the moment, I've been wobbling. I've found it tough. I haven't found the pandemic tough. I mean, I've gone through the usual stuff of, this is madness. This is like World War II. Oh God, what do I say in front of the kids? Oh my God, my mum and dad. I hope they don't get it and they don't die. Like everybody, I've gone through that. But personally, I've been wobbling for the past year and a bit, and I don't even know if that's the pandemic. Maybe it just happens when you get to my age and this point in my life.
Do you feel that because of your line of work, be it in kind of TV, radio, or any other kind of digital news media, so to speak, you're kind of surrounded by people anyway, and then, like, because you're trying to do the same kind of work but just in your own company, do you reckon that could be part of that, or is it something wider?
I think it's both. Like when we got into the middle of lockdown 1, or maybe even just after lockdown 1, I had a lot of my friends saying, love this working from home. It's really good. I'm getting just as much work done. I'm spending loads of time with the kids, all of this kind of stuff. And I just felt like I was in a void, in terms of not being around people. Of course, I'm a creator. I can create by myself, but I really fizz, and some creators don't, but I really fizz, no pun intended, with the friction of two personalities rubbing up against each other. I'm a bit of a magpie. I'll when I work with people, I want to know what they think. I'll take a bit of their idea. I'll take a bit of their idea. I'll take my idea, and I'll twirl the things together. And anyone who's worked with me, especially over the last 10 years, will recognize that it's kind of a collaborative thing. So that went, you know what I mean? And also, I saw it affect other people as well. Other people saying, I'm working from home, it's really good, I'm really enjoying it. And me looking at them thinking, but I've worked with you, I know you, and you are literally not creating at the moment. Or you have got such a brilliant work-life balance now that you're at home. Actually, I've lost out a bit because I've put everything into my radio show. Anything to do with Desi music, maybe this is the wrong thing to do. I put every fiber, every bit of my DNA into since I was about 15 years old. So yeah, it's been weird, and it's like the whole thing about lockdowns and the pandemic is, whichever way you look at it, it's been the enemy of art.
Yeah. I no, 100% agree. I think a lot of those creatives have I think it's been polarized in it. Either they've been, it's very difficult to find that middle. Either they've gone more creative, or they've kind of almost kind of hibernated away and waiting for it to come out. I mean, you mentioned something like, you know, your behavior in terms of like you could see people behaving like an outliner. And you mentioned, but you going back to kind of like 15. Did that creative process start from then, or was there always a feeling that in terms of like the way that your energy around art and creativity was something that you developed later on in life?
Now, I always knew I was a creative being.
Yeah.
But you know, my generation, I told my mum and dad that, they just laughed. You know,
Mm.
my dad was like, "You're going to be a doctor." I mean, like, we actually laugh about it now, because I actually say to my dad, I had a massive interest in science, but you never even took your time out to see if I liked biology, or if I was going to be good at science, or if I had an aptitude for it. So yeah, moving that aside, always knew I wanted to do art. Was always brilliant at visual art. Not so much music, because I was in our house. It was like, we don't do music. You get me?
Yeah.
Definitely drama, all that kind of stuff. For me, the driving force has actually been different. It's not been art. For
Yeah.
me, the driving force has been the British Asian community.
Yeah.
And I know this sounds weird, but you know, like, you know, you have a muse, all right? And everyone's got a muse. I'm not just talking about artists. You know, I'll give you an example from outside of my sphere, all right? I know some guys who know jack shit about everything, but they know everything about WWE, all right?
Yeah.
So, but the point is it really is their passion, and their passion's amazing, and they know every last little point. It's like all those guys who sit there and reel off figures and footballers and how many goals they scored in the 1988 season. My football, my WWE was Desi's. And that's it, full stop. So when I say Desis, I literally mean British Muslims, British Hindus, British Sikhs, British Indians, British Pakistanis, British Bangladeshis. And from the age of 15, I'd literally go, that's a book written by an Asian author. That's a series, and it's about, you know, South Asians in Britain. Oh, look at that actor, you know. And so very early on in my life, I got involved with creative people in Hounslow, in West London. And so everything after that's just been me dining out on my WWE stroke football, my obsession. And it just so happens that it's Desi's in Britain. And then after my early 20s, I suddenly realized I needed to focus, and I focused in on the music, because music was the one thing that literally pulled me into that.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, you were talking about kind of your passion being around the obsession, or a positive passion around being British Asian, the Desi community. We kind of share something together as well. We both went to Trent University. I studied politics. I don't know what you studied in it. What did you study?
Contemporary arts.
Okay, contemporary arts. Okay, that's fine. Did you see a lot of the movement from the Desi community coming into those things? And if you didn't, was it a kind of frustration to kind of get art into that field, like, or what, you know, like have that homogenizing relationship together?
All right, I'm very old. Okay.
No, I know you're 50 this in August, so I was going to bring that up later. Yeah, go on.
All right. I'm very old, so when I got to Trent, I remember going to there was an Asian meeting, Asian society meeting.
Yeah,
there was 12 of us in that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. I was at Clifton campus.
Oh
right?
yes, yeah. That's like, technically, some people still argue that's not Trent because it's just so far away.
It's like the Isle of Wight, isn't it? It's like
you
have to actually get on a boat to get there. But anyway, you don't have to get on a boat. But on campus, I think there were 5 of us. You get what I'm saying? So it's different times, all right?
Yeah.
I didn't go in there going, where's all the Desis? They weren't, you know, apart from Southall College or, you know, like, I don't know, Bradford sixth form, there weren't any educational places with lots of Desis. So, and when I actually started off doing communication studies degree, which then moved into contemporary art. So when I started doing my art, I was doing it because there was a vacuum. There was nothing.
Yeah.
So I was doing art, like using the Southall riots as source material.
Yeah.
I was doing art using, South Asian culture and British ideas of identity. The piece of artwork that got me onto the arts course with an unconditional offer was a massive Union Jack with Gandhi on the front with a machine gun, an AK-47 in his hand. All right,
okay.
that will give you an idea of. In fact, not only will that give you an idea of where I was, it's probably where I am right now. The other piece of artwork that got me in was a collage of a holy building, which was a third mandir, a third gurdwara, a third mosque, and I had 3 topless women in saris holding machine guns on the front of that religious building. That's, it's only now at the age of 50 I go, oh, actually we don't evolve. I'm still the same guy.
Yeah.
But that's what got me in, and that's I was doing this stuff because there was a vacuum. It wasn't like I'm part of the British Asian community. I wonder if I can do something a bit Desi and talk about Bhangra.
Yeah.
It was, there is nothing, there is no one. The other students were all doing economics or politics or other stuff. So I felt like this whole weight on my shoulders, having studied art, that I want to be the Salvador Dali. I want to be the young British artist of brown origin, Anyway, yeah, so that stuff wasn't really going on. This was also, this is how long ago it was. I remember hearing Movie Over India by Apache Indian on a cassette in someone's halls of residence during the end of my first year. So I'm just trying to.
Yeah, it's like a scene set in terms of what it was like at that point. So it was interesting that you always kind of talked about the burdens, and it feels like in every element of your career, wherever you're kind of moving, you've always had that burden on there of trying to be a pioneer, a trailblazer. You're very unique in your thinking and the way that you engage, and you've crossed over in that way. I just want to go back in terms of, so where you got your art, you went through there, and then how did that transcend into kind of music and get into that kind of field? Because I think a lot of people may not know you from that art side of stuff, but see you more like, define you as an early point in terms of club DJ.
Yeah, so this was the early 90s. I didn't start DJing until late 97, early 98. So, and the Asian underground movement, which is a movement that I really kind of plugged into, that didn't really start until 96, 97, and I didn't finish uni till 94. So what actually happened was a lot of my artwork at uni involved music anyway. Along the way, whilst I was at uni, I met Aki Nawaz from the band Fundamental and the guy behind Nation Records. So many of those proto early Desi bands, away from the Bhangra scene, I'm talking about Asian Foundation, Sony Talvin Singh, they all came through or had some connection with Aki Nawaz. And what Aki did was really fire me up around the time I was doing Gandhi with a machine gun, topless. Sorry to call them topless women. I mean, I painted them as, I collaged them as goddesses. But anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. I had this color and this rage and this art that I was almost vomiting onto pieces of canvas. What Aki did, and also I was really into the music, what Aki did was basically go, yay, amazing you're around, we need people like you. And what started off as an obsession with art, and to me art means music, and it means drama, and it means the visuals, and it means how you carry yourself, then morphed much more into music, just because I think the art had been around forever, but the music had been around since I was 1 minute old, just growing up in our house. And then secondly, my non-Desi life, these days you've got a life, right? Bits of it Desi and bits of it are white. Back then, there was no mixing up. It was, this is my Desi life, this is my non-Desi life. My non-Desi life was massively deep within the non-Desi music world. So as much as I was listening to Bali and getting into Apache Indian and going to Bhangra gigs, I was heavily into goth music. I got heavily into Prince. I literally tasted every musical youth culture along the way. So around about 95, my thing, which was our generation's come of age, we need to have our own youth movement, inextricably tied to music, because that's how I defined what white people had done, you know, whether it was the hippies, the punks, the new romantics, the mods, even hip hop culture. It was like, we ain't going to be taken seriously unless we've also got music that comes along with it. And so my original obsession, which was bigging up, promoting, and celebrating the Desi community, then turned into doing that almost exclusively through music. That's how I got into the Asian Underground, how I started DJing, and then the rest kind of happened.
So you know, you're coming up with almost like you're creating you're part of a whole new social movement. There was a whole new kind of sound that's come through in there. Did you early on, did you find that there was any resistance from the typical, you know, from the Desi market from there for this music, and then how did you kind of overcome that?
Yeah, so one of the actual stories of my creative life, and I think one of the stories of Desi music in Britain, which no one talks about, is the class divide. Now, I don't mean class divide as in people into Bhangra are really working class and people into Nith and Sunni are really middle class, because it was a bit more blurred back then. But yeah, there was a lot of opposition from both sides, and also there was a split in class. So I'll give you an example. As the Neo Asian Underground was happening, by Neo, I'm talking about 95, 96, where you literally had in your head, I'm going to go to a Bhangra gig. That's fine. What is a Bhangra gig? It's like a family party with extra alcohol and with no oldies, yeah? And with a lot of pulling and a lot of getting off with girls and people getting off with each other, all right?
Yeah.
But then on the other side, you had, oh, there's a band called Asian Dub Foundation. Let's go and watch Asian Dub Foundation. Oh, what's Bali doing? That's Bhangra, but it's not Bhangra. It's something beyond that. So when that was happening, I remember so much being the kid in the middle. Yeah. So I go to these Asian Underground gigs. Now, first of all, a lot of Asian Underground gigs had a lot of British Bengalis involved. You know, a lot of it was coming out of the East End of London, the Nusra Experience, Gessi, Osmani Sounds, a lot of those cats who were signed to Outcast Records and who were DJing for Talvin at the time, all came from East. So already the Bhangra culture is nothing to do with them. You get me, right? Then on top of that, there was a lot of snobbery coming from the Asian Underground, because a lot of these Asian Underground guys and girls were the kinds of people who said, I don't want to go to a sweaty Bhangra gig and nearly get knocked out because someone from Slough's fighting someone from bloody Wembley, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you'd actually have this, oh, isn't this great? Because those Bhangra gigs are shit, aren't they? And I'd always think, no, they're not. Bhangra gigs are everything, you know? And but then the same would happen with the Bhangra gigs, where I'd speak to the DJs, I'd speak to punters, and it'd be like, have you seen those freaks? Have you seen those freaks? Where you seen what they're wearing? Have you heard that music? That ain't bloody music. Come on, give me some Kuldeep Manik. What the fuck's that?
Yeah.
So the whole of the 90s for me was about actually surfing both sides of that coin. And I will say this, you know, when they were looking for, Radio 1 were looking for, you know, DJs, and they were looking for people to present this Desi music show, which obviously eventually I ended up presenting with Nahal. My drive from 97, a whole 5 years before Radio 1 even started looking, was always done by this class divide. I remember thinking, these guys don't understand the power of Bhangra, and they don't understand the power of Punjabi music and what it's done for us as a people, not just Punjabis, but British Asians in general, because it was the first successful expression of that identity. And then I'd look at the Bhangra kids and I'd go, we can't be stuck in Bhangra. Look at these Bengalis making music. Look at this, it's drum and bass. It's creative. Look, this guy, look at Nitin. He's a jazz musician, you know. So I remember very, very early on looking in the mirror and going, sorry, but going, you're special, because no one else gets it like you do. And now looking back, I don't think anyone did, apart from DJ Ritu. She's honestly the only other person I know who celebrated everything. Everyone else aligned themselves with either the Bhangra side or the Asian Underground side.
So I could almost kind of feel the struggle in terms of this kind of tribalism, where people have just like set themselves in kind of camps, almost political, isn't it? In some ways, you're in that one, but nobody was prepared to kind of like. There's a struggle of identity then in terms of saying like, it's okay to like a bit of that music and this music, and to kind of that fusion to come together, and then that was exactly what I'm guessing from what you're saying the BBC were looking for at the time.
Well, the BBC were just looking for a Desi music show.
Music guy, right?
And I was very lucky because I already had a vision.
Yeah.
I knew I had a vision already because it came out of my DJ sets. I'd drop Bhangra tracks at the Blue Note, and the fucking speakers and the walls would cave in. But then there'd also be a bit of a, well, that was fun. Not from me, but from other people. That was fun, but we're not a Bhangra club, And I'd sit there and I'd be with my Hounslow dudes, my Hounslow friends, and play them some drum and bass and go, literally jump out of the car going, listen to this. How new is this? This is new music. So I was lucky because I had the vision. In 97, I was already thinking, why doesn't Radio 1? Because you've got to remember the late 90s.
Yeah.
Were in terms of Radio 1, I mean, it was the space where you had iconic figures promoting iconic music. Yeah. So it's like, Westwood does the hip hop, Trevor Nelson does the R&B and the soul, etc., etc., etc. And I remember in 97 going, one of these days, there'll be a Desi music show. And very early on, I remember thinking, okay, whoever ends up doing that Desi music show, they can't be just Bhangra heads or R&B heads. They can't be just Asian Underground heads.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know, maybe it was my ego. Maybe I was just trying to, in my head, go, none of these guys are ready, I'm ready. But I thought it was a very obvious thing to do. When Radio 1 do a Desi music show, it's going to play all types of Desi music. It can't be one or the other.
I think it's going to be, you can't be in this kind of line of work without having some form of ego and an ego and a belief really in that. Not belief in the ego, but the belief in your passion. If it's strong enough, it will always get to where it was supposed to be. So I think it was like, just as we were talking about alignment of the stars in the first bit, it was probably at that time where the alignment was kicking in. Because I remember one of the first time I ever interacted with you was around about John Peel and his kind of space of where he was. I used to listen to, like, my mom used to, we used to get those magazines where you could get free CDs every whatever. And I used to speak to my mom, was like, she was born in India, come over, and she had like off the wall vinyls. She used to secretly kind of record Top of the Pops. It was kind of not one of the things to do. And she had a really massive eclectic list. So I used to listen, when I was a kid, I used to listen to the Eagles. I used to listen to Fleetwood Mac. And so I used to kind of listen. I used to listen to John Peel. And when he used to put in like some Bhangra, I used to be like, whoa, this geezer's crazy. And then like Westwood started doing, and then that's where I first got kind of your name, like it was mentioned around, when you were pairing up. What was that experience like then, and how did John Peel kind of put you in? Well, firstly, can you just explain into context in terms of music, especially British and world music, the position of and the effect, the icon of John Peel?
So for those who don't know, sadly more and more people don't know, but he still resonates. So John was doing radio since the mid-60s, all right? And John managed to be at the center of every nodal point of music from the mid-60s onwards. So when no one was playing punk on radio, John was playing punk on Radio 1. You get me? He was like the king of the underground and also the king of eclectic musical choices. You tuned into any of his shows, essentially you'd just get punk, reggae, dub, Bhangra, jingly jangly indie guitar music, world music. I'd switch on before I got heavily into music in my early teens, and I'd think, how come I'm listening to classical Arabic music on Radio 1? Then you switch on 15 minutes later and proper hardcore dub, Abashanti, Jar Shaka, dub, reggae, you know what I mean? Not commercial reggae. So John did that, and John was at the nodal point of everything that happened, as I say, from the late 60s all the way through to even grime. He was one of the first guys to start playing. I mean, he wasn't the first guy to start playing grime. Grime came out of the British black community, but in a world where there weren't any proper hip hop shows apart from Westwood's show, and Westwood was all about the kind of American hip hop at the time. John would play grime. So John Peel, the individual, is also a way of looking at life. John Peel is an individual who was born, lived, and died like an angel, all right? But his way of approaching music and radio is something that so many of us do. Six Music, the station, is essentially John's manifesto in a radio station. Everything I've ever done on the Asian network is essentially John Peel's manifesto on the Asian network. That's why when you tune into my show, you will be hit with the Northern Sisters, quickly followed up by some drill, some Tamil drill coming out of South London, followed by the latest, greatest Bhangra music. And then next thing you know, you've got some proper hardcore rappers from Uttarakhand in India, you know what I mean, or Karachi. So John Peel, hero and icon, but also a way of doing music.
So a way of living in that way, because from his
and can music. I just say something? You know, something you mentioned. When I first started, I got to know John pretty well, but the most standout thing for me was in the first week I started on Radio 1. It was like a Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. I got told, you're going in this room. In those days, you had all the daytime shows in one room and all the specialist shows in another room. So this other room, you know, Tim Westwood, John Peel, Trevor Nelson, etc., Annie Nightingale, you know, all these people. And I got told it's like hot desking. That's kind of your desk. You can share it with this other guy who works with John. And so I sat down, and on the first day, John Peel walks in, and I can't even breathe. Then he sits down next to me, and this beautiful face turns around, and he smiles, and he welcomes me to Radio 1, and then starts asking. And when I say starts asking, I don't mean, are you going to play this Asian music? He really starts asking, oh, are you more into a LARP and Upper Sangeet? Or are you more into the 90s sound, you know, Azad and what do you reckon's better, Birmingham or London, Southall or Handsworth? I mean, this guy knew everything. This old white guy knew everything. And that's when all the facts that I didn't even know started. You know, everything's recorded these days on the internet. Back then, nothing was recorded. So he'd say, oh, yeah, I gave her, a live session to, I think at the time it was not Bajangi, Premi. You know, or do you know, like, so this guy's telling me that he gave live sessions to Premi, to some of the biggest and also some of the smallest Bhangra bands out there. And it kind of put me in a very beautiful way in my place. I was like, yo, I thought I was the guy who's arrived to save South Asian music. And this guy's telling me about my job and telling me what he knows, which actually is more than I know.
So it felt like you found like a bit of a spiritual home where you are, and at that point, how did that journey then sort of go through Radio 1 and then eventually go into kind of the Asian network?
So I started on Radio 1 in 2002, all right, and interesting times, amazing times, some possibly some of the best and most rock and roll times ever. You know, like whenever I see someone come in their ascendancy and you're like, yo, this guy's a superstar now, or look at her career's really taken off, and you just kind of can see they're having the time of their lives, right? That's me and Nahal during the first couple of years after Radio 1, because it was ridiculous how quick it was. You know, we started our show in October of 2002. By I think May of 2003, we'd won a Sony Gold Award, and it was just ridiculous. You know, I went from DJing around the country. Nahal wasn't a DJ at that point. He started to DJ. I went from DJing around the country to traveling around the world with Nahal, and both of us DJing within the space of 12 months. You know, it was literally DJing every weekend, getting paid properly to DJ every weekend, DJing at non-Desi nights, DJing at festivals, traveling to Singapore to DJ at WOMAD, traveling, and all around this time, I signed a record deal with Sony Records. My album Friction got to #1 in India. I mean, India's obviously taken over since then, but in those days, I put a compilation album out with Mundian Tabachke, Rouge, Don't Be Shy, lots of Raga, lots and lots of Rishi Rich projects, all that kind of stuff. And because that stuff hadn't invaded India yet, my album went to #1 for 14 weeks. All right. And, you know, I mean, this is maybe another podcast. Some of the stuff that was happening around that time was ridiculous. I was doing gigs in 5-star hotels, then going up to my bedroom, and guys would come in literally with a sack full of cash and then empty the sack full of cash on the bed.
We need to go back.
What I'm going to say is, I know this is probably standard stuff for Jazzy B. You get me? All this stuff. For me, I was just like,
that baby, we made it.
You know, yeah, baby, we made it. Also, you know, I'm very partial. I was very partial then to drinking until I fell over. You know what I mean? So a lot of that whole era is in a haze as well. So anyway, that was going on, but musically, I was still keeping myself focused. And the reason I was keeping myself focused was because my roots went back, 10, 15 years before I'd even got onto Radio 1. And also, I realized moving forward, I had to keep, this is just, maybe the narcissism that artists have. And when I say an artist, I mean me as an artist, not that I'm an artist or a recording artist. My narcissism was, maybe that's the wrong word, but my obsession with my muse was to make sure that I didn't take my eye off the ball, all right? So this manifested itself whereby I was only doing 2 hours a week on Radio 1. It wasn't enough time, yeah? And then on top of that, very different time then. It's Radio 1. We've got to make sure it's not just Desi's listening. There's a lot of non-Desi's listening. We've got to make sure they're happy with the music. We need to contextualize everything, explain everything. This is what Bhangra is. This is what Bollywood is. And there was so much new stuff, so many new bands coming through, people making really weird shit, people making really Desi kid Bhangra stuff as well. And so what happened started off as, I think it was Adil was off, had gone off. I think he took some time off. He was off for a month and a half or 2 months. And it all happened very suddenly for various reasons. So they quickly pulled me in. Yeah. And suddenly I realized, the space of doing a nightly show, the space of speaking to people where you don't have to explain the basics. The space of being able to go, this is a 9-minute long Gurdas Maan track, which is the 8th song on an album that came out 10 years ago. And next up, here's a beautiful piece of Asian underground electronic music. And then next up, this is great pop from the next Raghav or the next Rishi Rich. It was addictive. And then I think I did that for 2 months. Something happened. Adel moved to Breakfast, I think, and they offered me the show.
And then, I suppose, then you had the kind of the next evolution, the next version control of Friction's movement in terms of like from the music side. Because I remember when I heard about it, I was like, nah, he's gone from Radio 1 to Asian Network. I think the perception was that would it be fair to say that it was a bit of a downward step, that people could see that?
I can totally see why people were saying that at the time. You got to remember, I was in a bubble. I didn't see it at all. Yeah. I literally was going on that show. It was still great. The Radio 1 show was amazing. But on that show, I have to curate so carefully. I'm cutting off tracks that need airplay. All right.
Yeah.
But that's fine because we only had 2 hours. Then on top of that, you had the creative thrust, push and pull between me and Nahal. Let's just put it this way. I've always known what I want and where I'm going. And Nahal has always known what he wants and where he's going. Yeah. And that was a recipe for a lot of tension a lot of the time.
course.
even though we had real amazing laughs as well.
Yeah.
So, when you've got this other show suddenly goes, do what you want. We trust you. Just do it. And I had 3 hours every night. I was able to do an hour. Someone would send me some spoken word poetry, which was mind blowing. I put it on. Someone would go, look at this. This is the first drum and bass track in Bollywood. I'd put it on. It was addictive for someone like me whose only mission was to get stuff out there. So I get why some people may have seen it as a step down. The way I saw it, because remember, I didn't leave Radio 1 and then start the Asian Network.
Yeah.
For about 3 years, I think I was doing both.
Both, right.
For me, it was like, it was the Asian Network show was real life and your family and your friends.
Yeah.
And then the Radio 1 show was being at work and putting a front on. You get what I'm saying?
So I'm not, it's almost kind of like this is your life at this stage, but I'm just trying to get into the kind of the frame of mind that you're in and the challenges, because it's sometimes when you look back on things, there's a very kind eyes of revisionism, and I think it's important that we kind of like to have it kind of documented, the journey of music, because it can be typified by through your experience. You've come into the Asian Network at that time. You've obviously found a spiritual home, or you did before. You've come into a newer one, which is giving you that more freedom. Your mental health is fragile at the time. What were some of the challenges that you were facing the organization at the time, or the radio station that you're going in, and how did you kind of tackle them? Because it feels like that you were not up to full strength. You've come into there physically and this is what I'm going to do, but mentally you're shot. You've got all these big challenges. You're trying to bring these kind of progressive music views and sound into this kind of, I would say almost kind of a stuffy radio station at that time. What were the challenges that you tackled straight away?
The challenges were personal and then professional. So personal, as I say, I defined myself by what I did. I had said to myself, if there's ever a Desi music show on Radio 1, I'm going to be the host. And it happened. You got to understand how mind-blowing that was for me. Looking in the mirror a week after I got that job and going, you're a Radio 1 DJ playing Desi music. I can't tell you, it didn't just, I dreamed of that exact job and role, all right? So when I left, it was like going through a divorce. It wasn't going through divorce as in, because when it left, the end was very clean and very, very nicely done. I'd said I couldn't continue for my mental health. They, at the time, I honestly think they would have done it differently these days. They at the time went, well, you've got to continue doing that, or you can walk. So I walked. So the divorce aspect of it was, I can only see this now in retrospect, I had a lot of blues for about 6 months. The blues were, did I do the right thing? Have I walked away? Have I done this? Have I done that? It's just what everyone does, that whole thing of self-doubting. And, I look back now and I just think, you idiot. You know what I mean? Ultimately, now in this day and age, keeping it real is the biggest thing you can do. You can't fake stuff.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, oh, have I walked into the Asian Network and left Radio 1? Obviously, the Asian Network's going to be the home of Desi music, like One Extra is the home of Black British music. But for a couple of months, I couldn't even see that. Have I done the right thing? Oh, I've walked away. There was also a lot of fear from me that I had a mission. I was on a mission. I was on a mission from God. You know what I mean? I did feel like the chosen one, in the same way these football managers do. Not as in I was better, but just like, no. My life's mission, and I'm the best person suited for this, is to take all the music and serve it to people and say, here's the music, all right? So there was a lot of, have I walked away? I've left it with Nahal. Nahal's not the right person to do this. This wasn't even his passion before Radio 1. There was a lot of that, but that lasted about 3 months because it was just the mental health of going through a divorce and waving goodbye. I had post show stress disorder,
Yeah.
PSSD, all right, for about 3 months. And then I'm sitting there going, what's wrong with you? But that was only natural.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, you got 3 hours. You got 3 hours, 5 nights a week. You know what I mean? You're 15 hours to create something new. And after about 3 months, the mission started. Was I grumpy for those 3 months? Massively. Was I a little shit to work with? Probably. But within about 6 to 7 months, we were firing on rocket fuel. You get me? Because dubstep was coming through, more and more tracks were coming out of India, to be followed soon by tracks also from Pakistan and Bangladesh. The Desi scene in Britain was diversifying and people were trying out new stuff. And also, you know, it was just a great time to be alive. So that's the personal. The professional at the Asian Network was, there was an old guard at that time who are nowhere to be seen now. And I know for a fact, a lot of that old guard couldn't believe that the management at the time had given me that many hours because they'd never grown up with that music. They were thinking along the lines of, well, surely you can have all Bollywood on a Monday night and all Bhangra on a Tuesday night. They didn't understand the eclectic nature of what I was doing. They didn't understand that the underground feeds the mainstream anyway. So you can't ever slag off the underground because the mainstream is just the underground 2 years later. All right. Yeah. They didn't understand any of that. Luckily, time and the industry and the history has proven me right. There's no one alive these days who only listens to one genre. Streaming killed even those people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everyone listens to a mix of music. And then secondly, the line between mad bonkers artists and then established underground artists, and then what happens in the mainstream is now fully aligned that everyone understands. Yeah. So every time, yeah, and I've just done it. It's happened on the Asian Network for me. It's happened literally 20 times over. I've taken artists, people have gone, they're too weird. I've carried on playing the artists, and people have gone, oh, they're all right. And the next thing you know, those artists are the mainstream artists.
Yeah, they blow up. They blow up. So, do you feel now, in terms of kind of like speeding the kind of that journey on a little bit more, that some of those challenges are still here, present now, or do you feel your job is getting harder?
Job's definitely getting harder, but for two really weird and quite unforeseen reasons. Yeah. All right. Now, the first one is just everyone can make music. All right. So just admin wise, you know, like the tracks I get every week. Yeah. I'm getting 8, possibly sometimes 9 times as many tracks that I was getting in 2006 and 2007. You know, me and Nahar would have listening sessions sometimes for the next week's show, and we'd listen to 7 new tracks. Dude, I did a listening session last night, and I only got 200 tracks in. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, the amount of music that's being made is ridiculous. And also the level, and it's just the nature of technology. So back then, just to even release a track would need you to be able to hire out a studio, get it mixed down, either play the music yourself or get someone to play the music. So by the time music got to us DJs, they'd already gone, whether they were good or not, they'd gone through a certain level of artistic
filtration
and interaction. What happens now is someone goes, whilst they're eating dinner, I can hear a tune in my head. And by 10 o'clock that night, they've knocked out the track and uploaded it to Spotify.
Yeah.
Now, so first of all, I've got to listen to that because my OCD means there's no way I'm not going to listen to it. I listen to everything that comes to me, even the real dirty stuff that's not even a finished track. I have to. Otherwise, I'm going to miss out on the next Riz MC or the next whoever, you know what I mean? So, and no radio DJ ever wants to look in the mirror and go, I got that global superstar and I never played him, you know what I mean? And that's what drives me, you know? So that's number one, all right? And there's lots of problems with the fact that people who can knock out a tune in 10 minutes, who aren't musicians, do think that they are the second coming. Yeah. So there's this extra problem of, I mean, I got a message last night. Let me read this message out to you, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm not going to name the musician. It's a musician who I've not talked to, who keeps sending me music, all right? Now, I do talk to a lot of musicians. I'm mentoring over 200 artists at the moment. Here we go. Let me just read this. 10K organic views already just on this track alone. They've sent me this track. I've not playlisted it yet. Hope you're going to do the right thing and push this song. You know I'm going to blow up with or without you. It would really be a shame if you still don't support me, but fuck it. That's life. I'm not calling that person out. I'm reading that out to give you an example of how nearly every, not every musician, but how lots of people think now when they make a track. They make a track, they can get 10K organic views.
Yeah.
I don't care about views. I literally do not, I don't even look at that part of the screen on YouTube. Why would I bastardize my ability to hear great music by looking at the number of views? So I've never looked at views, all right? What we have, not all of them, but we have a new generation of people coming through who in the past they wouldn't have ended up making music.
Yeah.
They're really angry. Those ones are the really angry ones. Look, like, if you don't play me, well, fuck you then. You know what I mean? It's that kind of vibe. So that's what's changed. And the other thing that's changed, and this is just generally like, it's like what we're doing now.
Yeah.
With this podcast.
Yeah. I'm a nobody.
What is music? To me, music's religious. Not religious as in religion. It's like a religion. Music itself is like a religion. It's beyond even the written word. It's beyond art, you know, painted art. That's how I felt about music. Right now, music is just another thing next to a TikTok, next to a podcast, next to a streaming series, next to a movie, next to everyone just getting together on a Zoom meeting and chatting. You know, I'm not saying it's the same as all that stuff, but it seems to me a lot of people think it is.
Yes, I think the word dilation comes through. You know, things being kind of diluted in many different ways, where previously that you had so many different religions, but in kind of one house of worship, you know what I mean? And it was all in that way. But I think, would you say in terms of like this instant consumption, this instant social media fame, and this instant kind of environment that we're living in is kind of almost pushing radio to one side, where they'll say, I don't really need you, I'm going to do it on my own, yet you still need the radio to play your stuff?
Okay, so that's radio, which is different to music, and that's a whole other discussion, which I can touch upon.
Yeah.
So radio is another thing. Yeah, I mean, us in radio, we're also up against this. We're up against it in the sense that back then, radio was one of 4 or 5 things you did, that you consumed artistically. Now, radio is just one of 100 things you can consume. And secondly, you know, some people are like, we don't want to hear the DJ, so you can go, I'll stream it.
Yeah.
Other people will say, oh my God, this playlist is perfect. You know, what's my job? I'm a curator. I literally am an organic version of the algorithm that runs Spotify, and places like that. Some people aren't that bothered about having a proper organic curator. They'll let the AI be the curator for them. I've let the AI curate my playlist on my Spotify account. Pretty fucking sick, isn't it? I mean, amazing what it does. So on radio, we're up against a tsunami of other things that take people away from listening to radio. That's insane for someone like me who loves radio. But what I really love is music. Radio is just a medium. Music to me is one of the most unique things this species has ever invented. It's not just part of art. Yeah, it's an art form, but music's even beyond dance for me. It's beyond poetry. Music is vibrational. And to me, the universe, what is the universe other than every atom in the universe vibrating? The life itself, the universe itself is music, all right? So when people turn around and go, I don't listen to much music at the moment, I'm watching Joe Rogan, or I don't really, listen to music anymore because I just really, really like true crime podcasts. I look at them and I just think, what the fuck are you on? Was this how you always saw music? Just another choice. And sadly, that is it for a lot of people, you know, and that's fine because, you know, who am I? But I'm not going to stop evangelizing about music, and music being one of the highest forms of humanity there is, because I believe that. I don't think you can compare music to a fucking Joe Rogan podcast. I'm sorry, you can't.
Is that to do with? I think you just kind of nailed it in that bit. Is that I would admit I'm probably one of those potential people because of time. I'm limited in terms of my time, family time, everything that I'm trying to do, and then I try and like use podcasts to try to educate myself in that bit. But what I did find is as I'm getting older, and this is like, you know, kind of the next bit. I'm almost kind of switching away from some of the first loves that I had around like Punjabi Bhangra music, which has been one of my things. I'm kind of getting more, once you realize the politics, the kind of headaches behind it. I just want to be a punter again and just like listen to stuff and just it's kind of naturally forcing me away. Do you feel that's that case happening and that I'm just going to focus in on the Punjabi music at this point. Do you feel that kind of genre is getting kind of smaller, or do you think it's ever expanding?
So Punjabi music's special. Let's just
Yeah,
give it that. You know, what it's done in Britain, even for non-Punjabis, unbelievable. What it's done for Desi music worldwide, unbelievable. Which is why you can still be in Bangladesh or Pakistan, in Tamil Nadu, in Sri Lanka, and hear a Bhangra track, okay?
yeah.
In a way that doesn't reverse. It's not that it's better. There's just something within Punjabi music. If before we even we can take the vocals and throw them away. There's something about the swing, the organic, earthy elements around the beat, which is just addictive, all right? So it's always going to be around on a Desi music level. If you're talking about people who are Punjabi like you and me, who are in the Punjabi music scene, a lot of what it's done in terms of its failures are down to the artists and the businessmen. I'm not saying the artists are writing shit songs, they're not. The great artists are still writing great songs, but a lot of Punjabi artists won't jealously guard their God-given talent with the respect it deserves. Now, how does that manifest itself? It manifests itself, for example, with a Bhangra artist who I was talking about recently, who just keeps releasing tracks. And you just kind of like, even the Bowies and the Princes and the, you know, Lata Mangeshkars, all of these people, they record tracks, but you don't release every track because it dilutes what your offering is. So, for example, Karan Aujla, all right, everyone loves him. I love him. He's as good as anyone else in terms of the current generation, if not better. And there's an argument to be made that he's out of this new generation, one of the greatest who will go on to be a great. But his release schedule and what he releases is a fucking mess. And this isn't him. This is obviously his management or whoever. I keep getting sent filler Karan Aujla tracks. I keep hearing one track and going, this is amazing. Within 4 days, the next track's out. This is not how you run, not a business, but this is not how you run a creative enterprise. And this is not how you secure yourself an artistic legacy. You know what I mean? There's a reason Prince, who had thousands of tracks in his vaults, there's a reason loads of tracks didn't get released. He wasn't sure if they were finished yet, if they were good enough yet. He wanted his artistic vision to come through albums and solid statements of artistic intent. When Karan Aujla keeps releasing everything that he's fucking recorded in a studio, then what he's doing is he's disrespecting his own creative future legacy. And that, my friend, is just one example of how artists are fucking it up for themselves. Then on top of that, you've got the business managers who, I'm sorry, you know, like they've literally, a lot of them have jumped into this job from business managing something else. You know, it's no use having someone who can sell chairs and then sell office space and then be an estate agent, then turn out and go, I'm going to be a music manager. they might understand how to negotiate. They may understand how to draw up a contract, but they don't understand stuff like that artistic legacy. And if you look at all the great music managers in the greatest music industry in history, which is the Western music industry, I'm talking about the industry and how it was run business-wise. Yeah, there was mad shit going on and there was awful shit. But the point is it still made more money and spread globally faster than any other industry. And that's because during the golden era, every single music manager, band manager, artist manager was a music fan themselves.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say though, in kind of in the kind of the artist's defense there, in terms of like it's the consumption rate, the audience is just demanding more and more and more and more. And so the rate of production is getting more and more and more. So it's just like just it's kind of almost exponentially the same as like there's all this competition about who's getting the most views, and to get to there, that people just producing more and more on that. Do you think that that's what it is? Do you think it's the audience need to chill out a little bit and just like give space to the artist to perform that, or there's this kind of rush of saying, look, I might only have a small amount of time in this light, let me just get it out there as much as I can, make as much money, and then go?
Well, first of all, I hate that.
Yeah.
Just the last bit. I hate that because if you're an artist, surely it's like being an architect. Yeah, there are architects who keep building and who are building for money and need to earn a living, and they want to just they'll build anything. But then you've got those great architects who changed the nature of how buildings are designed. I'm interested in those architects, right? And conversely, I'm interested in those musicians. Now, let's take this argument you've just given me about the audience demanding more. They demand more because they're consumers, right? I like this ice cream flavor. Wait, I can buy it now every night. But if that ice cream flavor isn't available every night, I'm not going to turn around 2 months later and go, well, out of protest, I'm going to stop eating it. I'm just going to want it more, right? This is about the business model failing the artist, but also the artists then making a decision at some point that I'm not doing this for the love of it. It's my career, so I have to approach this like you might approach your job working in local government, or you might approach your job working for a bank. So this whole idea that I'm relevant now, but if I don't release another track within the next week, the audience are going to leave me, I think is crap. Yeah. Like yes, you don't want to have 6 years between each single, but you have to look at the great success stories now, and also those great success stories from back then. They weren't releasing tracks every 3 or 4 weeks, and if anything, it's a really shit gamble to do, isn't it? Because a track's shelf life for the average music lover isn't a week. Yeah, it's months, it's a year, and then the great tracks last forever. The moment you put out a track and then you put out another track, you've already said to the first track, I could have given you a chance to really become a classic track, but I'm going to kill it myself as the artist or as the business manager by releasing another track really quickly.
Is this something that you kind of actively promote when you're mentoring your artists at the moment?
Well, yeah, I promote it by not playlisting most of their shit music. By that, let me rephrase that. By that, and you'll have a lot of introducing artists who'll tell you this. They'll be on my show, or I'll get a track, and there'll be an introducing artist, and then that track will get onto my playlist anyway, and I'll end up playing it for 2 months. Then they'll send me another tune, and I won't playlist it, and they'll kind of go, well, why haven't you playlisted it? And I'm not going to sit there and go, it was really good, but there's no way I'm like it's not as good, so it's not getting playlisted, and that's another thing. See, there's another thing. The gamble in the past used to be, I'm going to release 4 tracks over 2 years. I hope all 4 of them get playlisted. And then at the end of the couple of years, they go, shit, only 2 got playlisted. So even that wasn't working for the artist, right? But now the artist goes, I'm going to release 4 tracks over the next 4 weeks. And then when they don't get playlisted, I'm going to release another 4 tracks over the next 4 weeks. And then at the end of the 2 years, I'll have released 110 tracks over the space of 2 years. If I throw enough tracks at the wall, one of them's going to stick. So what I do is I just don't play the stuff unless it's really good.
Yeah.
I don't sit there and go, this track's crap, but this artist is hot at the moment. I get attacked all the time. You've been playing Sidhu for this long. Why didn't you play that track? The attacks around Gunnar Aujala are unbelievable. What you saying? He's the biggest artist in the world right now. Why aren't you playing this track? Look how many views it's got. I don't look at views. I never look at views. If I start looking at views, I totally get why radio stations look at views, because they've got to kind of promote an industry. I myself do not look at views, because my offering to my listeners is my ear, my brain. I've curated this. I've done all the hard work so you don't have to. So everything you hear on this show is fucking brilliant.
Do you feel that it feels like you're almost kind of being like a parent for the music, that you're not, I think gatekeeper is a bit of a just that word comes into me. I don't like that word, but in terms of like, do you feel now that because of your journey that you've gone through, there's a responsibility that you want to put out proper music, in terms of like putting away from the views, actually having an additional filtration system to give to the audience?
Yeah, actually, things work in a weird way. Before, you could have said gatekeeper. Back in the early days, I never saw it as gatekeeper. I saw it as, I know you don't listen to as much, the average listener. I know you don't listen to as much music as I do. So I'll do all the listening and I'll curate for you. Now it's different. Now, because there's streaming services and there's YouTube and everyone's got this playlist and people are exchanging tracks via WhatsApp, what people want now, in the absence of human curated music, is a human curator. So actually, for specialist radio DJs like me, we're relevant again we're relevant again. Our services are needed without us even having to change much. Back then, it was, you can't access most music, I'll access it for you. Now it's, you can access everything, but you can't see the wood for the trees. So I'll do that for you. I'll sift through that for you. So there's still a role, and I feel that from my listeners,
So that's what I mean by, you've got that parent one to say, look, this is my experience. This is what you're listening in to me for. And, like, I'm choosing these tracks because there's something about it. I'm not looking at the kind of the buzz around the views or the artist or the genre of music. It's just the way that just through your experience now, and you think the audience trusts you for that.
Yeah, because sometimes you have to hold people's hands. Something comes. I'll give you a great example. The Indian and Pakistani and Bangladeshi rap scene. I'm talking about rap coming out of the subcontinent, not British Asian artists.
Yep.
That I could see, just as it was starting. It's been around for years, but just as it was really gaining momentum 4 or 5 years ago, I could see that was an unstoppable scene.
Yeah,
it's massive now. It's ridiculous how fast it's grown. All right, but I knew British Asian people wouldn't jump into it instantly. A, it's rapping in language. B, there is a certain, which is dead now, by the way, but back then there was a certain kind of looking down our nose at freshies, looking down our look at this kid in India, all skinny, put the trainers on. What's he doing? Yeah. But now that seems massive. I had to so curate that experience for my listeners. I had to think about the track I played before it and after it. I had to think about where I placed the track in the 3 hours. So someone who loves Bhangra and loves British Asian music and likes a bit of Desi R&B and a bit of Desi pop could be led slowly but surely into that scene without me just going, here's loads of really hardcore Indian hip hop and them switching off.
I'm trying to frame this next question in a way, but it's my perception to start off with. I've kind of felt in the last 12 months, when like following you, that you've almost kind of justifying your existence in terms of saying like your experience, that your value into this whole scene. Is that a fair assumption to make from what you've written? And if it is, why is that?
Okay, so I don't understand what you're saying, so you're gonna have to
Yeah.
re-explain it. Are you talking about, because you mentioned 12 months? I've been talking a lot about how I feel South Asian musicians are not taken seriously by non-Desis. Was it that, or is it something else? And if
I
so,
think it was. I think it was one of the. Oh, I had the tweet, and maybe I'll be able to put it up on there to show it. But I think he was talking about the value of your experience of what you've been through and understanding of justifying like your experience of being a South Asian DJ and what you could bring to the kind of wider kind of. Oh, I don't know. I don't know you're trying to give you school me in terms of like the difference of media and radio and stuff, but to the kind of the British white folk in terms of saying that is that better?
yeah. Sorry, I was just trying to work out if I was justifying myself to Desis or justifying myself. I mean, what I've done a lot of in the past 12 months, just because it's been brought up time and time again,
Yeah.
is essentially I'm angry, Ricky.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think that was. I think I was trying to be as diplomatic as I can. I'm trying to buy time so I could find that tweet. But go ahead. Yeah, you're angry.
I'm angry, all right. And the reason I'm angry is because when I first started, I never thought all these years later we'd be sitting there and still be in a bubble. And it is a bubble, right? It doesn't matter if the bubble stretches all the way to India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and takes in Canada and America. Within this society, white people, black people, people who aren't of Asian heritage, they don't give a shit. Not all of them, but the bigger culture doesn't give a shit about what's happening. And on top of that, I feel like they don't give a shit about our experience as a South Asian experience. That's why the multiple and rich tapestry of the South Asian experience in Britain, which is now 40 to 50 years deep, still flashes like this on TV. You get what I'm saying? I mean, it happens to all people of color, and it's really happened in a brutal way to black people because they've created so much of what passes off as white culture and mainstream culture. But with us, we're deemed invisible by everyone. So when you go and speak to non-Desis and you say to them, what is British Asian culture or South Asian culture? It's literally curry and mundi and tabachke. You know? And I say this as someone who struggled alongside black people back in the early 80s when we were collectively known as black. We weren't black, Afro, Caribbean, African, Indian, Pakistani, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh. We were all black. Yeah. And all I'm going to say to you is you have all this pain that black people have been through, all this horror and cultural madness that happens to their culture because it's borrowed and stolen by the white establishment. But our story hasn't even got off the ground. You speak to the average non-Desi person, they have no idea. They just know that there's shitloads of brown people in this country. They might know a bit about Bollywood. They might know, they might start going, well, actually, do you know that it's mostly Bangladeshi people who run Indian restaurants? But that's it. They have no idea of the nuances of what's going on in this country. And what's going on in this country is British. Stories about Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan heritage people in Britain are British stories. And we're invisible.
And do you think that's
why I'm angry? Sorry, Ricky, that's why I'm angry.
Yeah.
That's why I've been so angry over the past year, because I have the benefit of looking back and going 25 years and we've moved 1 millimeter.
Yeah, because my next question was, before you went down that road, naturally was that, have we made progress? And I think, based on from what you were just saying, you kind of find it's hard to find the words to say, yeah.
No, we haven't made progress, and we haven't. Have we made progress within the culture at large? We haven't made progress between each other either.
Yeah,
because there are so many South Asian people. Look, I make a complaint like this on social media, and someone brown will come back and go, what are you talking about? Every newsreader's Asian. And they say that as if to say, you're wrong, stop complaining, we should be happy with every newsreader being Asian. I'm not talking about newsreaders. In fact, I want to ask, why is every fucking newsreader Asian? Why are there so many Desis in news? On News 24, on Sky News. It's great we're successful there, but what's stopping the music, the culture, and everything else? Look, what defines a society here and now, and in history, and in perpetuity, is their cultural output. British cultural output has so little South Asian involvement that 2 or 3 centuries from now, people will never know we were even here. That's fucking ridiculous.
Is that what you really believe? That you think that it's got to that level that they will be just kind of a blip or a dot?
How do we understand the 1940s or the 1800s? We look back at the books,
right,
and the music and the culture, yeah, and the architecture. You know, I don't know. Maybe there's an architect out there who already has a vision for what British Asian architecture is. I'm just saying, generally, if you move forward 200 years, you'd have to look at the top 100 books, the top 100 albums, the top 100 TV serials, the top 100 films. You're not going to find any Desi stuff in any of that. So we may as well be invisible to future generations.
Was that the kind of the fuel that you've used in order to, you've done several TV documentaries? Is that kind of one of your ways in trying to tackle this issue?
Yeah, but even that's really hard. So you know the Bhangra doc, Pump Up the Bhangra. I got that doc. It had already been commissioned. All right, I went in and tried to get a 3-part series commissioned. The 3-part series, what was going to be on Desi music in general. So it was going to be 60s and 70s, Biddu, all the folk music we brought over here, the emergence of Bhangra, to the 80s and a bit of the 90s, the full Bhangra scene, that Bhangra documentary you saw, and then the last edition was going to be kind of Asian underground up until now, all right? It didn't get commissioned. And then what they said was, oh, there's a Bhangra documentary that's been commissioned, and we're having problems with finding a presenter for it. Luckily, I got that, and I was able to shape the documentary in the way I wanted. But dude, 1 hour in how many years? Unless you pick up the odd piece on a news program or the odd section on a magazine program, that's 1 hour just on Bhangra in the last 40, 50 years. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why isn't there a whole hour just on Bombay Jungle? Why isn't there a whole hour just on a knocker? Why isn't there a whole hour just on the music coming out of Brick Lane and Joy Bangla and all that other stuff? Yeah. So that's, yes, of course. That's why I'm making these docs. It's not because I want to be a presenter, even though I'm a presenter. I'm not making them because I want to go, yo, I made a TV program. Ask anyone who knows me. I made those because I understand, and most people understand, if you didn't make the doc, it didn't fucking happen. And if it didn't happen, then it ain't real.
I'm actually in a state of panic at the moment because, some of the stuff, I mean, I didn't realize, and I've never thought about the arguments, what you've put in this way. And what I feel like is that we're going to need a few more frictions in terms of thinking to do that. Is there enough evidence that you've seen or experienced, or you've come in contact with people like yourself in that way of thinking?
What's nice at the moment is I do feel like there's a lot of people coming through. Yeah. So I feel a real affinity with what people call Generation Z, the Zoom generation. I really feel an affinity with how they want stuff recorded, their relationship to their culture. We used to call ourselves second generation. These Zoomers are like fourth generation. From what I can see, they've got a lot of their shit right. They're very inquisitive. Everything's got to be recorded because they are the digital generation. That's already a step in the right direction, and they have this obsession with their culture. You know, like with us, we thought our mums and dads were really uncool, so then we created our new culture. Yeah,
Mm.
they don't seem to think their mums and dads or their grandparents are really uncool. They think they're the coolest people ever. I love them for that. Yeah. I will say this, not that I'm separating Z from millennials or Generation X, because it's all amorphous anyway, and creative people will always come out and do what they want. I don't understand why the millennials didn't take what we'd set up and ran with it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I feel like maybe it's trauma, maybe it's something else, but I do feel like there was a lot of, okay, this is what it is, and we're going to carry on. Whereas I think Generation Z, this new generation, know that there's a sickness in the system and they want to fix it. And I see that manifesting itself with people wanting to find out about their history and then record it. I see it manifesting itself in everyone wanting to be a writer, everyone wanting to make a podcast, everyone wanting to talk about what South Asian culture is. I mean, even that word South Asian, I love it, because we called ourselves British Asian. These tags are important, right? Because they show you how we look, how we view the world. We viewed the world as the brown space as a brown space. A lot of the people who came after us said British Muslim, British Sikh, British Hindu. And for me, that was never going to work, because we do have a shared culture. And I think, if anything, that's what has slowed down. Whereas now with this new generation, they constantly refer to themselves as South Asian. So they've come back to this way of thinking, which is, we might be Hindu, Muslim, and Sikh. We might be Punjabi, Tamil, Sylheti, Bengali, all this kind of stuff, but we are a one. So I see it with the DJs. I see it with the authors. I see it with the people who want to make films. I see it with these people who've just graduated history degrees, and I can tell they want to become historians. So I am confident about the future, but I'm definitely going to be the canary in the coal mine, screaming foghorns, alerting everybody to the fact that we're going to get to a point soon where the last 40 years will disappear when people like me die.
Yeah, my next question was about asking you what's coming up next, so I don't really want to finish it on in terms of like you're gonna die. The next 12 months are going to be a really important time in terms of like in this country and our culture, in terms of emergence. How do we bounce back from the pandemic? What do you think is kind of the key areas that you think we should kind of focus on as a collective as South Asians, and especially for yourself?
Okay, as a collective, we need to take these new shoots that are coming with this new generation. Doesn't mean only they do it, everyone does it. We literally go on the attack. Yeah, my generation went on the attack. We were even more invisible. We're the ones who created Bhangra culture, you know, British Asian culture, Asian underground culture. The playwrights, the authors, they came through us not giving a shit about the mainstream and saying, we're going to do this. We've had the reset of the pandemic, and now we've got this new generation who want to digitize everything and who are so interested in the generations above them and their struggles. So we go on the attack. And, you know, I tweeted today, I said, what's needed is unity and celebration. And we don't have that. I'll give you an example. When you think of an Idris Elba, when you think of all of these young black actors and people coming through, historians, you know they're doing their work, but you know they're part of a whole. You get me? Mm. You can totally draw a line between drill and grime coming out of council estates in South London and an actor being nominated and winning Best Supporting Actor. And that culture celebrated on both ends. Those drill MCs who are only 16 will literally go, yo, look at our boy Daniel. Look, he's got an Oscar. And he's going to celebrate it that way with his Oscar. That's not happening for us. Do you ever hear of a really big South Asian news presenter, TV presenter, author, or filmmaker actually celebrating the music scene? It doesn't happen.
No. It's
It doesn't
almost
happen.
kind of being just kind of shunned away. Don't want to be associated with.
Dude, I've got colleagues who are big now. I'm not going to call them out by name because they know we're going to have these conversations, and we've had these conversations already. I know people, multiple people who've come through the Asian network, who've then gone on to bigger and better things. The moment they left the Asian network, they left the Asian music behind. Yeah, that doesn't happen within the British black diaspora. It doesn't happen because they understand. So when we come back now, we come back with unity and we come back with strength. Yeah, I want that author to recognize that musician. I want that emerging musician to recognize that TV presenter. I want that filmmaker, all of them to interplay with each other because that's what the black British community do. And it's one of their biggest strengths. And it's one of our biggest failings. And you can't blame white people for that. You get me? That's us.
That's very powerful, Bob. Honestly, you could just see some, just the different areas that you haven't thought of. You just emerging your ideas. You can just see kind of like your train of thought. Bob, this is it is the bandwagon. So this is an opportunity that I give all the guests on there to say if there's anything that I've missed or any bandwagon that you want to kind of talk about, this is your opportunity.
No, the only bandwagon, and I've already mentioned it, but I'm going to say it again, is we are being erased. We will disappear unless we take action. Just like the climate emergency, there's a South Asian emergency in the diaspora. If we don't act now, then we will disappear. We will still physically be here. Our grandchildren will be here, but they won't understand anything in the same way other communities do. So if that's an emergency, get to action, people. Your troops, yeah? It's not a culture war. It's a war, but not against anyone. It's just the way culture extends itself. You're a troop. You're a soldier. Get ready, start fighting. Otherwise, move out of the way.
Bobby, thank you. Really appreciate it. There's a lot of food for thought for everybody listening. Appreciate it, mate. All the best.
Thank you, Ricky. Much love to you, bro.
Cheers, man.
All right, done.